This is going to be a spoiler review for the movie The Drama from 2026, directed by Kristoffer Borgli. It's a black comedy sort of movie about a perfect couple who are about to have their nuptials. However, secret by the fiance, the woman, threatens to tear things apart. So, first off by saying I'm going to reveal what the big reveal is for the movie. This is a spoiler review, obviously. So basically, Charlie and Emma are a picture-perfect couple. And they're about to have their wedding in a couple of days. They're sort of doing all the pre-wedding stuff, like doing a dance choreography. However, they see their DJ doing heroin in the park, and it sort of, unnerves them a little bit. And then they do a wine and food tasting for the wedding with another couple, Mike and Rachel, who I think is going to be his best man and Maid of Honor. So they're closest couple of friends, and while they're doing the tasting they have too much wine, and Emma and Charlie bring up the whole should they fire the DJ, and they start getting into the discussion of what's the worst thing you've ever done. And Rachel eggs Mike to tell his story. When he was in Mexico with an ex-girlfriend of his, he pushed her in front of a dog and used her as a human shield. And then Rachel she says that she pushed a slow kid into an RV after the kid showed her the RV, and they couldn't find him for a whole day, and the police had to get involved. They eventually found the kid. And then we jump over to Charlie. He's kind of boring, so he kind of says that he cyberbullied a person to the point where maybe they left and moved, but he's not 100% sure. However, when Emma goes to her story, she says that when she was 15, she planned a mass shooting terror attack and didn't go through with it. This is pretty shocking because as someone who doesn't know what the twist going in was, I thought it'd be sexual in nature. That kind of shows a reflection of our society. A lot of people probably were guessing something along the lines of something scandalous, like, you cheated with the professor in university and the dude's wife took her own life or something, or you were in a drunk driving accident and you killed 3 other people and were in prison for a while, or something crazy like that, something sexual or something scandalous. But this one was really hard to guess sort of scandal for Emma, and Rachel doesn't take it too well to it because her cousin Samantha is in a wheelchair because of a mass shooting attack. So definitely has some tension, and that's sort of the main sort of conflict of the movie. So something I wanted to discuss was that it's really hard to sort of visualize Charlie as an ugly person on the inside because he's played by Robert Pattinson, who's very handsome, very good looking. But the movie does do the footwork of showing that he's not, a normal, confident guy. At the beginning of the film, he's writing his wedding vows and talking to Mike about how he first met Emma. He tried to talk to her at a coffee shop. However, she's deaf in one ear and she didn't hear him. So he thought that she was blowing him off. And then when he went back to apologize, she's like, yeah, I didn't even hear you the first time, and lets them start over. And that's like their meet cute kind of story. He's really awkward. He also took a photo of her book so he could lie and say that he's reading that book. And he admits that on their first date. And then their first kiss is him at his job at the museum. They went there after hours to sort of have a nighttime tour, but the alarm went off and then he kissed her in a panic. So he's not the smoothest customer in the room, but Emma likes that, and they've been dating for 2 years. And that's sort of one of the main sort of takeaways of the movie is that, he's, sort of put her on a pedestal of sorts. And I sort of felt that too, because I think Zendaya is very beautiful. And, if you're going to marry someone really beautiful and you find out something shocking about them right before the wedding, it sort of throws you into a tizzy. But the movie also establishes that he's a really neurotic and anxiety-ridden like that, because she'll often have to put on a song or pants him in order to get him out of his funk to sort of lighten the mood. So he's kind of neurotic in that sense. And, it's hard to sort of generalize that. When you think of neurotic, you think of Woody Allen, or think of, someone who's not as good looking as Zendaya. But Robert Pattinson is good looking, and it's hard to sort of associate him being, lesser than her and trying to get her as a catch of sorts. But the movie does frame it that way. He's the protagonist, and this event that happened to her is now happening to him. And the movie is a satire and a black comedy in the best way, because it's not focused on Emma, like on her. They do explore like why she did it, and through flashbacks, and she explaining it to him, but he has to like try to reiterate that to other people, mainly Mike and Rachel, and they don't care. So the movie does a really good job of showing that like people don't really care about Emma's sort of trauma from her past that would make her do that. It's more about like ew, like this happened and this is happening to me and I have to marry this woman, like so it's really interesting, the way they sort of frame it, as everyone was reacting to this sort of thing that didn't even happen. This does lead up to a really great scene in Rachel's office where she's trying to double down on not being the maid of honor and attending. However, Charlie lies to them and makes up an event that Emma lost her childhood friend in a car accident or something, and she had to witness it. And as soon as he says that, they sort of back down and go forward with the wedding. And it's a really great pitch perfect black comedy, because this stuff happens to real life people. There was a myth, a rumor that Stieg Larsson had a female friend that got abused, and that's gave him his idea for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo book series, but he debunked that. And then Stephen King also had one where people couldn't sort of figure out how he came up with all these macabre stories. So they said he witnessed his childhood friend die in a train accident, and he's like, that never happened, and then debunk that. So sometimes people will sort of try to infer meaning and excuses for certain things, and Rachel and Mike easily back off when Charlie mentions this fake story, and then it's really great. There's also like the theory and conjecture that Charlie was lying about his story, or is he just that boring, because it's probably might not even be the worst thing he's ever done, because, cyberbullying, but he's also from another country. He's from Britain, so they have different laws there about cyberbullying and stuff. And he does bring up the great scene of like, well, it's America. Everyone wants to shoot everyone. It's a really great great scene. That's probably one of my favorite parts of the movie. One thing I did notice, that Rachel is sort of the big hypocrite of the movie. Everyone likes to hate her, but also, even if she didn't react the way she did, Charlie would still be anxiety ridden and neurotic, because that's the nature of his character. He would still be kind of weird about that. And there's a great almost dream sequence of Emma sort of imagining what Charlie's doing when he goes out for coffee, and it also leads into a payoff for the DJ, which is really unrealistic. Realistically speaking, you cannot fire a DJ several days before your wedding without paying some sort of huge deposit. They confront the DJ and tell her that they saw her smoking heroin, and then they have to fire her, and it's like really cringe, but it's also like, it makes Charlie panic. But also Charlie's panicking because of what happened to him at work. The main sort of climax leading up to the climax is Charlie's having lunch. He's eating food, and his underling, she's actually works for him, is named Misha, played by Haley Gates. And Misha is basically just chilling, and then he goes, hey, hypothetical question. What if you found out that your man, Blake, organized a school shooting when he was 15 but didn't go through with it? And then he doesn't give her context, though, right? He just asks this question, and he's her boss, so like she's gonna play kid gloves. So she's like, well, why didn't it happen? And he goes, oh, because the car broke down or something. And she's like, well, I'd call the cops because I'm scared of, Blake, my boyfriend. So he freaks out and has a breakdown in the office. She tries to console him, and then he kisses her and almost has sex with her right there, and she's willing to have it, and he apologizes, and that ends up being sort of the thing that lowers him to the same level as Emma. He can't be on a high horse if he's cheating on her and almost, doing all this other stuff. And if Emma finds out at the wedding, and then he sort of infers it during a speech, and then Misha's boyfriend Blake beats him up at the wedding and causes a huge drama scene. For the ending of the movie, though, he goes to the diner, or they said they would go after their wedding in their attire and have burgers, and he sees her there, and she lets him start over like they do at the beginning of the film. So a lot of people didn't understand that sort of scene. It happens in the middle too, where she basically tries to say, let's just start over in our living room, and he can't because it's just too weird, and he can't get it up during sex too. It's like, it's really affecting him that badly. It's not a, well, this happened. He's really too into it, and he's in his own head too much, and that's kind of one of the major themes of the movie. So the drama is a really interesting movie. I can see why it's jumping into the cultural zeitgeist and why it's getting people talking and going to the movies. It's one of A24's biggest hits, but definitely want to talk about so many topics. I mean, it also opens up the topic of the director, Kristoffer Borgli. He wrote an article calling himself Woody Allen because he dated a 16-year-old for a summer while he was 26, and it was done in the language, his native language, so no one knew about it till recently. So that also opens up another can of worms too. So, I like a movie that can sort of push out discussion and sort of talking points and people get excited for. So that's my spoiler review for the drama.